Okay. Morning, everyone. I am going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. We'll note that all board members are present with the exception of Helen Hudson and Larry Williams, who are excused. Everybody should be able to see the agenda in front of them. A couple nodded heads just to confirm. Thank you. And first on the agenda, we have the acceptance of the July 23rd, 2020 minutes. I'll entertain a motion to accept.
So moved.
Great. You have a second? I haven't heard a second yet.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. All right, next up, we have a report from the secretary. Joe, you're up.
Yes, good morning, everyone.
Morning.
We did have a contractor lien come through against PAC from Herc Rental. PAC quickly bonded it off, so it's been taken care of from a legal perspective. The second item I have is we are working with Brad O'Connor to potentially revamp our payment process so that at the next meeting we may submit to you a consolidated payment list in a different format instead of using the tranche 1 and tranche 2 format. And we can entertain questions on that now, or if you want to wait till we actually present it to you.
Okay. Don't need it that loud.
I'd appreciate just a little bit more context around the impetus for that change.
I guess I'll defer to Brad then.
Brad, you prepared to give us a little insight?
Yeah, really, it's an administrative change. It's challenging to accumulate the information in the format that it's currently being presented. So Joe and I discussed it, and he didn't think there was much reliance on the delineation between tranche 1 and tranche 2. The more important information is who we are paying and how much we're paying them. So really, it's just eliminating the 2 reports and moving them onto one sheet. If there are members relying on that information and tracking versus the tranches, then certainly we can reconsider.
Okay, makes sense to me. Any questions or concerns about that? So that'll eventually come back to us?
Next month.
Great.
Hey, Mayor. Hey, Joe, can we get that in advance of the meeting so at least we can familiarize ourselves with what it looks like?
Yes, that's a good idea. I'm sure we can get it out to you well in advance of the meeting.
Okay. Good. Joe, anything else?
No, thank you. That completes my report.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
All right. Next up, I'm going to turn it over to our program manager, Chris Gray, for his report, and I will try to bring up the report so people can follow along. Morning, Chris.
Good morning, everyone. So we'll start. If you have the report in front of you, upper left, but just giving you an update on where we are with procurement on the procurement side. The gym floor replacement over. We're just trying to conclude there with contractual requirements to have in place for insurance and the contract in place for that. I anticipate going on that shortly, and we'll be on that probably through October at this point. I had a little bit of a hiccup here with getting a contract in place, so that'll extend the schedule slightly. Under Corcoran FF&E, we have some furniture to buy there and we're still working through the procurement method for that in terms of whether that will be a bid or a purchase. We're working through that. Anticipate having that concluded in September. Fowler interior package, documents are we're going through the documents now and anticipate that to be bid this fall. October is what we have identified on here for that, and that's the balance of the work that we would have on the interior renovations of Fowler. On the concession storage building, that is something that we're procuring it through. The school district is procuring that. Again, the package is being assembled and developing those documents, and again, we'd be bidding that this fall, potentially kind of in concert with the interior package for Fowler. And then Corcoran site package is, again, that's being developed, and the target for that procurement for that is the fourth quarter of 2020 or potentially the first quarter of 2021, just depending on what's on the market and what the timing will be for that, so that we can perform that work next summer. Under project budget and approvals, not a whole lot to report here, just that we did receive approval from SED for our early aid start request form, which enables us to get aid flowing on the project in advance of submission of a final cost report, which was part of our plan. So we just we received the approval on that, which is a good thing. Beyond that, just our efforts are focused. We have several projects that we want to get final cost reports submitted this fall to the state. So we're working through financial closeout with the contractors to complete those, to enable us to assemble some cost reports in November for submission in December. And then under project design status, just we do have an additional work package that we're working through for Nottingham at the moment, and still developing that kind of in concert with reconciling where we are on the other projects and building that budget, determining the available budget and building that scope. Under construction update, just to go through quickly here with that, at Blodgett, if you haven't been by there, we did complete the paving, the new paving of the parking lots over there, and some reconstruction we did, and fencing, big improvement from what was there before. If you were to drive by, it really it serves to be a nice finishing touch over there in terms of what the whole building looks significantly better, as well as the grounds. At Grant, still working through a few punch list items over there and trying to dial that down. I think the piece there is that all the academic spaces are complete and ready. None of the finishing touches, if you will, or the small work that with punch list remaining will impact the ability to use the building for its purpose. Huntington, much the same, still grinding through some punch list items and having some discussions to bring that to close. But again, the academic spaces will be available without, for use of the building. It'll be in good shape. Ed Smith, just about completed on Ed Smith, had a few things that had some delayed time on them in terms of some security screens for the window and some glass that got back ordered, but they were there this week doing that, and I was happy to say that one is just about there as well. At Bellevue, very much complete. Anticipate a final payment in September at Bellevue. A Fowler site, if you haven't been by there, it came out wonderful. We are done over there. We completed the contract work, as anticipated. We do have a little bit of extra work that we'd like to do over there. We're going to install some additional fencing just to allow the district a little bit better control of that space in terms of separation and keeping a separation off of the track and the field. We thought it was worth doing, and the budget allowed that. So that's one piece of extra work that will be done. And we anticipate that, by the end of September, we're 100% over there with everything. So unfortunately, given where we are, it's unfortunate that we're not on it yet, but it is ready and will be ready for folks when we can resume sports on it. So we're excited about that. And if you haven't been over there, I'd highly encourage you to at least drive into the back of Fowler and take a look. It's very impressive. At Corcoran, as you know, that's a phased project. We're moving forward. I would say that big improvements or noticeable improvements there is that, all the new windows are in the building, which really has done wonders for the interior of the building, a lot more natural light. We replaced the windows in the 2 bridges that traverse over from the A building to the B building. Again, a significant difference just in the aesthetics of the building and the natural light that's in there. And we're continuing efforts there. That was pretty significant mechanical replacement that we've gone through over there in terms of new air handling units up in the mechanical room, and those will be turned on and turned over sequentially. In Corcoran, if you were to walk through, you are going to see some spaces that are partially finished, and that was the plan in terms of occupancy. There are certain finishes that are not in place, and we knew that, but we've worked directly with the administration there to understand the building use, which has been evolving a bit in terms of how we're going to use the building. So then we have a plan for that now. But if you were to walk through, it's much the same as Nottingham. There's definitely a work in progress, and you are going to see spaces that are not 100% finished, not with respect to impacting the use, but just in terms of that phase completion. Henniger, moving forward well over there. I think the piece over there is the addition. Foundations are in, and we are going to start structural steel installation this month and into September. So that's starting to take form over there. If you were to drive by as well, it's starting to come to life over there in terms of the addition. At Nottingham, I think the piece there is very much still work in progress. That one is another one where we're going to occupy some spaces and they're not 100% finished, and that was the plan. But from the outside looking in, one might say, it looks like it's not finished, and in fact, it's not. I mean, we're going to continue to work over there. I think a highlight there that is really, again, coming to life is the library. That was a significant renovation to basically gut the entire library that was there and remove a majority of the walls. It's a one big open space now with exposed structural steel, and then we're cutting a large opening in the to create a stair down to the first floor that will enter in through the corridor. So going to be really neat transformation when we get through with that. Clarion Danforth, not a whole lot to report there, just moving through. Demolition and abatement is our first step as we advance work there. Underneath constraints and critical issues, I spoke to the final cost reports this fall that's for Ed Smith, Bellevue, Grant, Huntington, and Blodgett, and we're moving forward on that. And then last month we had identified some areas that were a focus for school opening. And Nottingham, the air handling units, those have been activated. That was noted last month as a concern. Those are activated, and we have air movement in the building. The main entrance in the lobby, we had some concerns about this, the amount of work that was there to get that functional. Based on the current plan for the operations for the building, and in light of trying to not funnel everyone through one entrance, they're going to use alternate entrances to the building is the plan. So we will not be using that main entrance in the lobby as part of as they have traditionally used it. We're going to be entering the building at alternate locations. So, and then we did have a bit of a delay over there with receipt of the VCT flooring. There was a manufacturing issue and did delay that, but we now understand that we're going to have delivery by the 31st of this month. And then combined with the fact that classes won't start, until the beginning of October, we have an opportunity to potentially advance the installation of that tile and not feel the effect of that delay as much. And then toilet room finishes, we'll have those, to a point that they're complete and ready to use by the 28th. That was an area that we were just kind of concerned about, as it's time consuming with the finishes, but looks like we're in good shape there. And then Henniger activation of the new air handlers. We have 2 over there in this case that we need to reactivate, and the plan is to have those reactivated by the 31st, and then the AC functional by the 4th of September. And at Corcoran, as I mentioned before, we have flooring installations in the B wing and the classroom and the corridors. We're working through that. There are going to be areas that will not have all the finishes back in place, but we have a plan for that. and activation and commissioning of the air handler. That's in good shape and should be at the end of this week, tomorrow and Saturday, having the air restored there for the building. That's a lot of info, but questions, comments, concerns?
Hey, Chris, this is Chuck. I have actually 3 questions.
Sure.
So the building over at Fowler, so does that mean it won't be installed until the spring if it's not going out to bid till the fall?
Yeah, I would anticipate, Chuck, completion of that by next fall. There was some discussion as to whether we procure it and try and build it through the winter, or whether we procure it and then just start it in the spring. Was something we were looking at.
All right. My second question is, and this will come up later, but I figured since you're on the docket, we could ask you now. There's resolution 63 that talks about camera servers.
Yes.
And in all my years of doing this, I've never seen that show up as an item that's considered a construction item.
Okay. It was definitely part of the project in terms of installation of the new servers for the camera installations that we were doing as part of the project in terms of the technology that we were doing on the project. And the reason that it's now surfaced as a purchase is that the server that was originally specified in the documents, when it came time to remembering that we designed this probably 2 years ago now, when it came to the time for submission of the submittal on that, the actual server specified was no longer available. We had some discussion about what was the equivalent. That went back and forth, and then there was some debate as to what the equity was for the equivalent, and so we worked through that. And at the end of the day, it was coming down to it was available to do to buy through a cooperative, direct purchase, and that did help with the savings in terms of not having another layer of markup on that. And so at the end of the day, we evaluated and determined that that was probably the most cost-effective way for us to do it, and also, frankly, the most direct way in terms of receipt of it to the district and allowing them to do what they need to do in terms of imaging it before we put it in place.
So that's for more than one building?
Correct. Yes. Okay. It's for, I believe, 7, I think is for 7 different buildings we're putting the server in.
All right.
Yeah.
Last question. With all the focus lately on HVAC, ventilation systems, et cetera, has that caused you guys to relook at what was spec'd for any of these facilities, or you're starting to commission things? Is that going to meet the new upgraded specifications?
To answer your question, we have not modified what we're doing per se. I would probably default to the engineer to tell us if, in fact, that unit was specified to operate with the greater MERV capacity, you know what I mean, in terms of filters. I would have to default to them. What I've seen in a lot of the designs is that, in fact, they have been at the higher velocity because state ed has ramped up. Regardless of COVID, they've really ramped up the number of air changes and the volume of air that needs to be provided to spaces in the past few years. But I could certainly have the engineer prepare something that speaks to that, in more detail. I'm not prepared to speak to what capacity filter it will handle or not. I know that's been a big focus.
Right. Yeah, I just don't want to have to go back and tell somebody we did a brand new thing and it didn't meet what the current concern and awareness is.
Yeah. The biggest, as I understand it, in multiple conversations on that the unit, if you put too great of a filter in there, obviously you are reducing the flow of the unit, as well as potentially compromising, the unit's ability to function because you've limited it so much. But I know that they have been, like I said, in light of a lot of the stuff with SED, they have been upsizing units. Of course, remember the design that we're dealing with today was something, again, that was put in place and put on paper probably 2 years ago. But we can certainly ask the engineer to kind of do a case-by-case evaluation of that in the context of, with the filtering capability.
Yeah, I'll leave that for a consensus of the group, but it might be I would imagine it coming up as a question, especially by parents and others.
Yep.
I agree. I mean, I'm getting those phone calls every day. People are asking about, what filters are we using? What is the system and all that? So I agree. Thanks, Chuck, for asking that.
And
I
I would,
agree
and I,
also.
would- yeah, this is Calvin, and I echo it. I think Chuck is spot on, and that's a great observation.
All right.
We'll ask that they, the mechanical engineer for each of the projects kind of evaluate that for us and give us an overview of the capacity and of the.
Great. And on that note, you all set, Chuck?
Yeah, thank you.
Not to overcomplicate that point, but I think as long as we're on COVID-related modifications, I would just be interested, Chris, not necessarily now, but maybe as part of a briefing next meeting, just to talk about any other design considerations that that you're looking at going, particularly with projects going forward that might be modified as a result of what we've learned from COVID, whether it be spacing or who knows. But there's probably a lot of little tweaks here and there, and I don't know what's realistic to expect, but be good to kind of get a sense of best practices out there and how those might be able to be incorporated going forward into future projects.
Yeah, it's certainly been a question that's been asked a lot, and I think we're still, I think designers, engineers are still kind of absorbing this in terms of trying to get their bearings and get some constants. I think that we'll see more in the next probably 6 months in terms of methodology. I think right now there's still a lot of stuff circulating and a lot of different variables, I guess I would say. So I would say in the next 6 months they'll know more and start to maybe have some standards that they move towards.
Good, thanks. Any other questions for Chris? Okay.
All right.
Thanks, Chris. Good
Yep,
update.
thank you.
Lots going on.
There is.
All right, I am going to now bring up the financial statements as we turn it over to presumably Donna to go over them.
Good morning.
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 I'm trying to turn my video on here, but for some reason it's not. It's just circling. So I'm going to get started anyway, as long as you can all hear me.
Yep.
Okay, we're going to start where we normally start, which would be down on page 5 if everybody wants to follow along.
Okay. Go ahead, and I should have this pulled up shortly.
Okay. At the end of June, the JSCB fund has a total of $144.8 million of both phase 1 and phase 2 cash. So compared to the May statement, cash did decrease by $4.6 million, and that was due to vendor payments of $4.6 million. And we also had an increase in interest income of $5,482. Included in assets is the total capital assets of $223 million, and that represents all the activity up to 6/30/19. We'll see that start to change here as we get through audit. Those dollar amounts will change. We did close in 1920. We did close the Fraser project, so those numbers will be updated as the audit progresses. Also, the total liabilities at the close of June is $348.4 million, and that includes bonds payable for both phase 1 and phase 2 projects. So at the end of June, the unaudited total net position is $19.5 million. And I'm going to move on to page 6 to the statement of sources and expenditures. So the phase 1 year-to-date sources and expenditures, there has been no change for the month of June. However, in past months, I did report that we had the pass-through funding of $10.4 million from the district, and the subsidy payments received were $720,000. And the expenditures that I reported in prior months were principal and interest payments of $11.7 million, and the $720,000 was transferred out to the district. In phase 2, our year-to-date sources that I reported in prior months was the bond proceeds of $97 million, the $708,000 in capitalized interest, and a receipt of pass-through funding from the district of $9.1 million, along with the $695,000 reimbursement for the band principal payment. However, the interest earned on investments, as I said, did increase by $5,400 this month. So we have a total of $1.3 million on earnings and investments. The expenditures for the capital outlay for phase 2 is now at $85.2 million in vendor payments, and our debt service principal and interest payments were $12.2 million that I reported last month, along with the district transfer for the Fowler project of $250,000 that was reported in a prior month. I'm going to move on to page 7, which is our cash flow statement. Our cash flow statement now shows all the actuals for the year, and our total at June does reflect the $4.6 million in vendor payments and the $5,842 in investment income. You'll notice that we are starting to receive investment income once again due to the COVID-19, the total drop in the market. The interest rates bottomed out. So now we are starting to realize a little bit of an increase. Hopefully that will increase. You'll notice that at the beginning of the year, we were at $205,000 a month, or approximately thereabouts, but hopefully this will increase. So we did end out the year June 30th with $144,880 million to pay on project expenses. So I am going to cover at the end of this, we will talk a little bit about those interest rates and the interest income a little bit more. So I'm going to move on to page 8, and that is the sources and expenditures inception to date report. And the inception to date sources for phase 1 project is $141.6 million and $292 million for phase 2. And the expenditures for phase 1 is $141.6, and the phase 2 expenditures increased to $153.7. So that concludes my report, but I do want to talk a little bit about I did have a conversation yesterday with Calvin, and we did talk a little bit about interest rates, and the interest rates are so low currently that it is something that he did bring to mind, and it's something that the district had thought about in previous months, the possibility of doing a refunding on our phase 1 bonds. Now, I don't know if all of you were not on the board in 2017, but in 2017, the JSCB did refund the 2008 phase 1 bonds, and that was our first bonds that we used for phase 1. So we did realize a savings of those of about $3.4 million over the remaining life of the bonds. So we are getting close to the call. We can recall the bonds for 2010 and 2011 that we used for project costs for phase 1. However, I did reach out to Raymond James. I asked them to take a look at it for us yesterday, and just to get a sense of where we might be with some savings there if we were to refund the 2010, 2011 bonds. Now, the thing is, they are not callable until May 1st of 2021. So we would have to assume a taxable advance refunding if we were to do a refunding before that date, okay? So the current tax law does allow a tax exempt advance refunding starting 90 days prior to the call date. So if the JSCB were to deliver refunding bonds on or after January 31st of 2021, then they could be sold as tax exempt, which could translate to more savings. So the current proposal indicates that we could have a possible savings if we were to refund these bonds now of about approximately $2.4 million. However, it would cost approximately $400,000 in closing costs for a net savings of $2 million. So the 2017 legislation allows us to refund revenue bonds, but the savings that we realize may only be used for district capital projects, cannot be used for anything else other than that. Can't be used for debt service or put back in a general fund or anything like that of that sort. So if we wait, we could realize more savings. Raymond James did report to us that in response to the COVID-19 crisis, that its effect on state and local government financial positions, both the House and the Senate have introduced bills that would reinstate the tax exemption on advance refunding bonds. But while there was positive momentum earlier in the summer, it looks increasingly unlikely to occur before the election. So if allowed, the use of tax exempt advance refunding may result in higher savings levels versus a taxable advance refunding. So it is something we may want to consider in the near future. And we may want to revisit this and take a look at it again. So I'm hoping, Calvin, that does answer any questions for you. Do you have any other questions regarding the possibility of this? No, I guess not.
Calvin, if you are on mute, just you may not have any questions, but if you do, you're on mute right now. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Yes.
Yeah, Donna, I think that was very thorough. The only comment that I would make is that businesses across the country are refinancing debt. The challenge, the one concern I would have is we could possibly save more later, but if the interest rate environment, if the rates go back up, then we can lose that saving. So.
Mm-hmm.
Uncertainty in the market, we don't know if we wait until next year, if we refinance that the fees would be less, but the interest rate.
Point taken. It's something that we will.
Those are prepayment. There's no closing cost of $400,000 on that debt. It's a prepayment penalty, which I think we should try to negotiate. See if we can negotiate that fee structure down. But it's certainly something we should look at, Mayor. I'm sure you've got your folks in the city looking at that as well. You've gotten these bonds that are callable to refinance that in this rate environment to save some of that interest expense.
I think it's a great point, Calvin. I think we need to look really, really hard at this over the next, between this meeting and the next.
Yeah. Okay. But Donna, thank you for that. Donna, I would ask if the committee's pleasure, just if you could put that in writing, and we can look at this for our next meeting and make a determination, something we want to move next year.
Absolutely. We can put something together for you. Mm-hmm.
Great. Thanks for the thorough response, Donna, and Calvin, thanks for asking the question.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All set, Donna?
All set. Thank you.
Very good. All right. Going back to the agenda, we have a report from our independent compliance manager.
Good morning, everyone. Mr. Mayor, would it be okay if I share my screen? Only
I think so.
Zoom in? Okay.
Yep. Evan is technically the host, but as long as he's allowing people to share, you shouldn't have a problem.
Okay, let's see if this.
Yep, it's coming through.
Okay, perfect.
Good.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Hopefully you could see this okay. I have it a little larger on my screen. I wanted to start out with just our summary page that basically shows all of the projects, and also the ones highlighted in blue are the ones that are closed out on our end, and that'll be reflected in the next few slides also. So basically, wanted to give you a little backdrop. What we did during the COVID process is, in conjunction with Lamont Mitchell, we've kind of reached out to all of the firms, whether it be site visits. We did a few webinars. We posted stuff on our social media platforms just to see how the local community was doing as far as how they were hit. We actually called every certified MWBE firm on the City of Syracuse list and just wanted to reach out with them. And we contacted all of the contractors as well, just to see if there would be any deviation in any of the goal numbers. We expected a little bit, but so far we're still doing pretty good. As you could see, our minority percentage is at 19.88%. Our women is at 11.14%. So the businesses are doing well. The residency were actually creeped up a little bit more since our last report. I think it was 19.13%. So we're at 19.30%. So the residents are still in there strong. Students were killing it at 9%. So collective from the MBE side, we're at 13 for all of the contracts awarded to the MBE firms and 15.76% on the W. So everybody's still strong, and as usual, we continue to monitor that. So for the professional services side, for the minority business, 8.2 million was subcontracted out. Of that, 5.5 million was paid out. So about 67% of the contractors have been paid to date from the professional services side on the MBE. On the WBE side, about 4.3 million was subcontracted out. Of that, 3.2 million has been paid out to the WBE firm, so about 74%. Now we go to construction on the MBE side. We got about 11.2 million that was subcontracted out. 10 million was paid out so far. We're at 94.74% of the firms have been paid. And we take in consideration the retainage, punch list closeout. Oftentimes we see that number go over 100% because 9 times out of 10 they keep the minority and women firms on site for change orders. We also are maintaining our change order log for all of the change events and monitoring the minority and women utilization from that. And we're in constant contact with the different GCs, CNS, Turner, just to keep that monitored. On the WB construction phase 1 for the women, 18 million was subcontracted out. Of that, 16.5 was paid out. So about 91% of the firms have been paid to date for construction tranche 1. Construction tranche 2, if you look at the total for tranche 1 and 2, about 23 million. So about 14 million was paid out. So about 59%. And that's the combination of tranche 1 and tranche 2. For the women construction, combination of 33 million of the combination of both tranches, and 18 million of that has been paid out. So about a little over half, 55%. Now we jump to the hours for professional services tranche 1. 204,000 hours we calculated, and 39,000 of that was minority. 57,000 of that was women residents, 47,000, and students, 29,000. And then we'll have the total of the both tranches on the next page. So the combination of the two is 273,000 hours for professional services. Of that, the minority was 53,000. The women were 72,841, and the residents have 61,000 hours, and the students were 36,000. So collectively, 19.34% of the minority, 25.59% for the women, 22 on the resident, and 13.40. And this is going to be calculated also with the construction for our overall total at the end. So construction for tranche 1, 518,000 total hours. Of that, 90,000 of those hours went to minorities, 25,000 for women residents, 91,000, and 42,000 for the students. So our overall total for hours, which is at the bottom, it's like a burgundy color, 938,000 hours for the total so far for tranche 1 and 2. 186,000 went to minorities, 104,577 to women, 104 to residents, and 84,515 of those hours went to students. So that's how we got our total percentages at the bottom of 19.88 on the minority, women 11.14, students 19.30, and 9.1 on the students. That's all I had for today. I do know that with a lot of these schools starting to close out, we are receiving a lot of utilization plans. There have been some changes and a few challenges with some of the firms. We are working with a couple of the GCs now to make up that participation. It's not reflected in this report, but it will be. So we're waiting for some revisions to come in. And then Lamont and I will be looking at that to hopefully get that number into the next report.
Great. Thanks, Lloyd. Questions, Lloyd? I have one. Lloyd, can you just remind me what type of participation we're getting from the students?
Sure.
I see the numbers, but just a little bit of context around what roles they're playing.
Yeah, well, individually, there's a combination. So the students is a portion of the overall hours. So it's not a double count. So of the 938,000, of that, 84,000 of those hours are the students. So we're keeping a separate tab on that just so we make sure we don't double count. Same thing with the women. The contractors have a choice to classify them as women or minority. If say it's a Black female or a Spanish female, they have they can choose. So when we meet with them or we speak with them and tell them that the goal is looking like it's slipping a little bit, and they have that afforded to them, they change it and they make the decision. Some of these student hours we're finding because firms submit certified payrolls and they don't send in an attestation form, letting them know. So when we do our site visits, we keep a log and then we refer back to what all of our attestation forms. We let the contractor know that this person should be counted as a student. And because they're so busy building and so forth, they weren't aware. So we kind of do a triple count. So we attestation form, certified payroll, site visits, compare the two and make sure everybody's counted.
Okay, so that's helpful, but specifically what I'm wondering is what are the students doing in these projects? How are we identifying them? What's the connection back to curriculum? Just a little bit more of those details.
Yeah, so the students are former students, so they're not actually current. We do have some trainees that have participated on the job that are younger, but they're either former students that we ask them to identify on the attestation forms.
Thank you. That's what I was missing. Any other questions for Lloyd? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are up to the resolutions, and Joe, if you want to start walking us through those, ready when you are.
Yes, Mayor. We start as usual with resolution number 57, the monthly payment to Landon and Ryan.
So moved.
Second.
Haven't heard a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 58 would be the monthly payment to Turner Construction.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 59 would be the monthly payments for the Tranche 1 contractors.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 60 would be the monthly payments for the Tranche 2 contractors.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 61 would be a payment to Hancock and Estabrook for a small legal matter that came up.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 62 would grant a one-year extension to Landon and Ryan for their continued work as the independent compliance officer.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Resolution number 63 refers to the question that Chuck had about purchasing camera servers for the various schools.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Could you, I'm sorry, I didn't catch who moved and seconded it.
Pat Bodie moved it.
Jaime second.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Resolution number 64 would increase the fee for Energy and Environmental LLC for their project monitoring services on several of the schools.
Mayor, I have a question for Chris on this. Chris, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
So this went up by 30%? Did their scope of work change?
Yes, we had a fair amount of additional asbestos at some of the buildings, I think Nottingham most notably, in terms of the additional work we did there for them, and corporate had that.
Thank you.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Carried.
Finally, resolution number 65 would be an insurance payment to extend our current builder's risk policy for another year.
So move.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
That completes our resolutions for today.
All right. Thanks, Joe. Any other business to come before the board? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Okay.